Welcome to the last session of What's Cooking. This week I'm going to be demoing two different dishes. One is I'm going to start with the empade, which is the Venetian Jewish almond-filled S-shaped cookies. Sometimes they're called serpente or serpents. And then we're going to be making the Moroccan Rosh Hashanah soup, which is made from chickpeas, squash, and lots of beautiful spices, saffron, cinnamon, and ginger in particular, a combination that I really love. So I'm going to start with the cookies, which have two parts. First I have to make the dough, next I have to make the filling, and then we'll roll out the dough, fill them, and bake them. While they're baking, I'll start making the soup. So first is going to be the dough. So because this is kosher dish, cookies, it's not made with dairy. So that the pastry we're normally, you might be making a pastry with butter. In this case, we're making it with oil. So that means that the dough can't hold as much fat with oil because it's not emulsified or solid like butter is. So you have to put in as much as you can, but also need to roll it on the thin side. It won't be quite as tender. So here's the flour, which is 20 ounces of all-purpose flour. I weighed it, but if you don't have a scale, it could be 5 cups. Dip it, and then like that. You want to fluff it up a little bit so it's not really compact when you're measuring with a cup. And then dip it in, and then like that, and that's a cup. So 5 cups of the flour. I'm using an unbleached all-purpose flour, Sir Galahad, that comes from King Arthur flour here. That's that. And next I'm going to say you need 10 ounces or 2 cups of sugar. So I have some sugar here. It happens to be organic cane sugar, but it certainly doesn't have to be that. So sugar, I don't weigh it. I just do it by the cup because the weight doesn't change. And then I need sea salt. So I have 1 teaspoon of fine sea salt, like that. Could be kosher salt, could be table salt. All of them are going to work very well. And then we're going to have actually 3 large eggs, which I'll break into here. And actually, Lori, I want to ask you, perhaps if you could give me a 1/4 cup of water from here's a 1/4 cup, here's a cup. You'll have to go behind there. Sorry, one thing I forgot. Meantime, I'll break the eggs, and I'll break the eggs into a bowl just to make sure that I'm not putting any shells into the dough. Here's that. Thank you very much. We try to think of everything, but we obviously can't. And I have actually these really, you'll see, look at the color of the yolks on these eggs. These I buy from the Dave's Backyard Farms that's in the Creekside right now, and they're beautiful, really rich tasting eggs because of that color. And I need one little thing here. Oop. Okay. Just beat them up a little bit. Pre-mix that. And then I need I'm going to mix the eggs. This is 1 cup of vegetable oil. Could be soy oil, could be corn oil, could be sunflower oil, grapeseed oil, anything that's on the neutral side. Actually, this is part olive oil. So all olive oil might be a little strong, but it's nice to have a little bit of that taste. So mix in the eggs with the oil and a little bit of water. And that's that. Mix those things together. And now let's just mix all that first. Pre-mix, this is just the sugar and the flour and the salt. So whenever I do any kind of baking like that, I like to pre-mix the dry ingredients to make sure that everything is distributed really well. So you don't want to have any pockets of salt or pockets of sugar. And now in goes this is the egg, the oil, and the water. And I'm just going to Oop. Bowl is slightly small for this, but we're going to make it work. Because like everybody out there who's watching, we always have to improvise in our kitchens because it's never going to be everything exactly what we need. Now, it's a nice dough, and it's pretty easy to work with, but definitely better if you let it set in the refrigerator or even make it ahead and freeze it. So I'm going to mix it, and once it's all mixed together, we'll chill it and make it easier to work with. You can see that all the ingredients are starting to come together. You want to make sure that all the dry ingredients are mixed in so you don't have any loose flour there. Okay. Okay. So this is a fairly large recipe. You certainly could make the whole thing and freeze half the dough and freeze half the filling to make it, but you know, once you're making it, it's just, to me, it doesn't make sense to make a small quantity. Maybe it's because I'm used to cooking for, you know, catering for 200, and I have to say, it's been a kind of a challenge to learn to go from cooking for 200 to cooking for 1, but somehow it works. Okay, here's the dough. And I'm actually going to take some of the dough that I pre-made that's already chilled. That's going to be, let's see here. Actually, I want to make this filling first. So let's just put that aside for a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, for the filling. So, for the filling, the first thing is the almonds. And I bought these blanched almonds, so that just means almonds with the skins off. You could use almonds that have the skin on, but the filling will tend to be drier if you do that. So, and just it's a clearer flavor when you have the ground almond. So you could either buy ground almond or almond flour. Bob's Red Mill is one brand that's really common, and you can definitely find that in the supermarket, or you can order it online. I ground the almonds myself in the food processor ahead of time, and that is the 1 pound of the almonds. Okay. And next is going to be 2 cups of sugar. So lots more sugar in here. You need that for the tenderness. Here's 1. And here's 2. And I'm going to need my eggs. So that's 2 whole eggs and 2 yolks. So again, I'll break them into the small bowl. Let's move this aside so you can see better. 1 and 2. And now I'm going to, let's see here, we'll put the whites into here. I'll save the whites. I'll put those in the freezer to use them at a different time, maybe making a meringue of some kind, which is good for cold weather. Can't do that in the summertime because the weather is too humid for that. It gets soggy. Okay, so now I have that. I have 2 whole eggs and I have 2 extra yolks. Let's put that aside. Oops, excuse me. Put that over here. 1 second. Sticky hands, huh? Okay, now time to beat this up a little bit. Maybe I'll use, how about this? It'll be easier. Okay. So we have the almonds, we have the eggs, we have the sugar, and the next thing is going to be lemon zest. So here we go. Fresh grated lemon zest is, I would say that lemon and orange zest to me are the best free ingredients because, you know, every time you buy a lemon or an orange, you can use that. Of course, it's better if it's organic, but I certainly don't stick to that all the time. And what I do, if I'm making lemon juice for something, I'll take the zest off beforehand, mix it with a little bit of oil, and then put it into the freezer, and then I have it ready whenever I want. So this, I'm using a microplane, which many of you probably heard of. If you like to use the zest, it's absolutely the best. Now, I could have done this ahead of time, but I like to have at least some of the things to be able to show you. And it smells so good. So that, using the grated lemon zest, is really a typical Italian flavoring for pastries. They use vanilla, but not nearly as much, because vanilla was expensive and imported, and the lemons are grown, locally there. So they could use that, had that, and really nice fragrant lemons. A lot of people have lemon trees growing in their gardens, so just go outside and get a couple lemons, and there you go. Or they might even be able to make it with etrog zest, citron zest, if they have that growing, as they do in certain parts of Italy, especially in Calabria in the south. Okay, yep, almost done. So 2 nice lemons, which makes about a tablespoon of the zest. If you don't have a microplane, best thing to do is use a potato peeler, and just make sure that you don't get in too much of the white pith. So the yellow part on the outside is going to have the fragrance, and then the white that's underneath is going to be more bitter. So you want to avoid that if you can. Okay. So now I have the zest in there. And what else? 1/4 cup of dark rum. So I happen to have a bottle of Myers rum, which is really wonderful for baking because it has such a nice strong flavor. If you don't have rum, you could use whiskey, you could use bourbon. A nice anything brown would be aged in wood, gives it a good flavor. If you don't have that, I would still, even a vodka would be okay. So 1/4 cup of the dark rum. That's that. And now in goes the eggs. All right. And I think I need here, I'm going to take a spoon just to mix it all together. Hopefully you can see that. Best would be if I had a set of big glass bowls. Right now I only have the metal bowls. So this filling has a really great flavor. It's nice and moist. The eggs give it richness. The most important thing is the quality of the almonds. Okay. That's a little bit like the taste of an almond macaroon in there on the inside. Okay, so that's the filling. So now we have the filling done and we have the dough done. And the next thing is going to be rolling it out. Oops, excuse me. So, now let's get rid of this. And I'll put the rum away. Don't want to drink it because I want to make sure I have it ready for the next time I bake. Okay. And now I need my flour, just a little bit of flour on the board here or on the wooden table. Always best to roll on wood if you have wood, just because it's, for this kind of dough, you don't want it to be super cold. But if you have a different kind of board, it's fine. Let's see, can I put this over here? And then rolling pin, of course, it's whatever kind of rolling pin you like the best. This one I've had for, I don't know what, to 30 years, maybe something like that. That's a French style pin because it doesn't have the handles. I prefer that because I feel like I have more control, but that's really up to you. So now I'm going to take a little bit of the dough, a nice handful. This is the same dough that I just made, same recipe. And what we do, it's kind of cool. You're going to make like a snake. Remember I said these cookies are serpents, so just roll it out like you rolled out Play-Doh or clay or something like that. And that's about right. And I need, see that knife right behind you there on the board? Yes. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Oops, let's get this out here. And then the piece about 2 inches long. Oops, get that over here. And so each roll makes whatever I have here, 6. I have 8 coming out of here. Something like that. 6 to 8 for each one is good. Now I'm going to roll, first roll the long way, and then I'm going to roll the opposite way. That's one. That one's a little small, but we'll see the next one. I had to experiment a few times to get the right size and thickness and shape of these. 1, 2, and we'll do it again. I'll do 2 rounds of these, so we'll have a dozen, because a dozen is about what fits on the baking tray. And I have preheated the oven to actually 400 degrees. I have to heat it up a little bit more here because I had it at 350. That'll be ready. Here's 4. Here's number 5. So they won't all be exactly the same, but that's part of the charm of homemade, is the, you know, you can see the hands in there. It's not made by a machine. Okay, and one more. So the best thing that I've found is to do one snake, which is like 6 or 8, fill them, and then do the next one. So we're going to do that. And now I have some of the filling. This is also filling that I pre-made, but I could actually use the one I just made. That really doesn't have to get chilled. And you want to make a piece that looks like about your pinky. A little piece like this is going to go right onto the middle of each one of these rectangles. And just like in any time you're baking or cooking, it's best to do all of one job at one time. So roll all the little pieces out at one time. Make all the filling, these little fingers, all at one time, instead of doing it from start to finish. So think assembly line. Okay, here we go. And this is a little on the sticky side, so you may have to wash your hands in between, which I'll do as soon as I get these all of these little fillings on there. So the point with anything like this would be similar to making ravioli or tortelli, is that you want to have the most possible filling and the least possible dough on the outside. And that's actually one of the big differences of like homemade ravioli versus the kind that you buy that's been made by machine, because the machine can never stuff in as much as you can doing it by yourself with your own hands. So you can always tell that difference. Here we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to put that aside for the moment, and I just need 1 sec because I have to wash my hands. You're going to take the edges, and then up they go, meet in the middle, and here, maybe if there's a little bit of extra on the end, I'll just get rid of that. And that's just making the snake. So you're folding it from either side up onto the top. You can see that now. That's the beginning of it. And then bring it to a point on either end, and then pinch in the middle here, just to bring that nice raised edge up, which really makes it very pretty. And then you're going to curl one in one direction and one in the other direction, and onto the, they do spread, but they don't spread that much. So that's that. Next one, same thing. One side, and then the second side, they're going to meet in the middle. Just barely here. Maybe I could have made them a little bit wider. Make them another 15 or 20 times. I'll be really good at it. Okay. So let's see. This one goes this way. This one goes that way. It's just very cool. So the impade. You can hear that it sounds like empanada, and that definitely has a Sephardic, it's a very Sephardic kind of a dessert, similar to the Moroccan Jewish cookie, which is called Kabal Ghazal, which is made in a half moon shape rather than in this twisted snake shape. Almost the same. The main difference is that in Morocco, they will flavor the filling with orange blossom water, and in Italy, they flavor it with lemon zest. So that's that. Here's number 3. I'm going to keep going here. Oop. And, oops. Number 4. Where we're lucky you weren't here yesterday when they came with the big chipper truck. There was a giant tree fell down in my backyard, and then they had to, you know, take it down with a buzz saw and then run it through the chipper, and it was extremely loud. So today seems to be nice and quiet so far. Okay, here we go. That's number 4. And now, see if I can get this one to work. Yeah. Again, it's trying to get the most filling in the least amount of dough. And you try it a couple times. Maybe one won't work out perfectly, but the filling doesn't really pour out of there, so it'll work pretty well. Here's number 5. Here's this one. I actually think that I have to, okay. Okay. 6. And now that's 6. These two look a little bit too narrow for me, so I'm going to put those aside, and I'll make another batch here. And let's see if we can get them just right. Okay, so I want to make, since a dozen fit on that baking sheet, of course, well, one thing I wanted to say is the baking sheet, if you can see here, has this liner that's a Silpat liner. It's made from silicone. That's something that you can buy, you know, online for sure. It comes from France, and you can use those over and over again. So they really, you know, like instead of using parchment paper or wax paper or something like that, use the silicone sheets. The only thing about it is you have to be careful never to cut into it, which of course I found out the first time I used it and made brownies and cut into it. It ended up with a lot of shredded silicone there. So this feels like a little too big. Here we go. Now we're going to do one more round, and then they'll go into the oven, and we'll move on to our next dish. Oops. Okay. Extra dough here you can definitely use again because it doesn't really toughen too much. So if you can re-roll it at least one time is good. Okay, here we go. This seems good. That seems better. So making it a little bit wider there. I think I need more flour for my rolling pin. Whoops. Let's just leave this over here. And that's it. This one I feel is like the perfect size and shape. That's what you're looking for. It's about 2 inches by about 4 inches if we're doing it, measuring it. And there we go, 3. Oops. Make us a little bit of room here to work. So now my goal would be to get to Venice and be able to taste these on the spot. I guess we'll have to wait for a different time when we're able to travel again. It would definitely be interesting to see that. Here's 4 and one more. And then we'll fill them. Now the other thing is, I said you could freeze the dough and freeze the filling, but you could also freeze the cookies like this. So what I would do is put them just like this in the freezer, and once they're totally frozen and then they're hard, you could take them off of the tray and put them together into a Ziploc bag or a container. But you want to pre-freeze them so they don't stick together. Okay, now I'll just rescue this. Can I do that? Or are you a little too sticky? All right, well, let's just let that one go for now. Okay. It's like when you make crepes or pancakes, the first couple don't really work out well till you get the hang of it, and then this is a little bit like that. Okay, here's this. Two. 3. I have a count. I think it makes, the whole batch makes about close to 4 dozen cookies. Just a little bit under that, depending on the size. So if you want to freeze half of it, you could make, 2 dozen at a time. That would work. Okay. All right. This is done. This is done. Let's see if I can do this just by wiping my hands this time. Okay, so over it goes. This is here. So you want to bring it from the sides up to the top. There we go. Extra, pull it away. Make the points. And now, there we go. And you'll see each one is a little bit different. But that's part of the charm. That one's slightly bigger than the other ones. And personally, I do love to bake. I'm glad I had this opportunity because, living on my own, I don't want to have too many baked goods around. It's too much temptation these days to have those treats. Although I do, I love baking and I love homemade baked goods. So here we go. There's that one. So this way, I have an excuse. There's a bit of that extra because you don't want too much. You want just that thin shell of the dough coating that really luscious almond filling inside. Here we go. There's the points on the top and the curve. And now 5. We've got 3 to go and into the oven. They go at a 400-degree oven. Let's see here. Excuse me. Bake 5 minutes, and then we reduce the heat. So just the beginning to set the shell, to set the shape of the shell, and then we reduce the heat. Okay, 4. This is fun for me, and I hope that you enjoy making them and that you learn something and you have new taste to add to your repertoire from this beautiful Venetian Jewish tradition. Okay, here's number last that we're going to do today. Oop. And now make the points, and in it goes. Whoops. Okay, now it's going to go into the oven. I have the oven set at 400, as I said. Put it in the middle shelf, and then we're going to leave it for 5 minutes. I'll put a timer on that because otherwise I'll be sure to forget. And now we're going to, just while we're waiting, I'm going to get set up for the next dish, which is that soup, the Moroccan chickpea and squash soup. So I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll get to see what they look like in about half an hour. So now I'm going to start making my soup, which is the Moroccan Rosh Hashanah soup with chickpeas and butternut squash, and it's going to be flavored with ginger, saffron, a little bay leaf, and cinnamon. So first thing, first of all, according to the recipe I sent you, it said soak the chickpeas overnight and then cook them in the stock. So I actually have another pot on the stove with the chickpeas and the stock that are cooking. Just because it would take a long time. Maybe we can get a shot of that, just a still of that. And then I also have a still that I want to show you of what the chickpeas look like when they're cooking, because they give off a huge amount of white foam that you have to spoon off. That's protein impurities. Anyway, so this is a giant onion, which I did get locally grown at the farmer's market. And I wanted to show you because, you know, I think I have a good technique for how to cut an onion. Here we go. Maybe I won't use the entire onion because the recipe says one onion, but doesn't say one huge onion. But those are the ones that are available. And as you can see, I cut it through the poles to begin with. And then I will say, for cutting onion, the sharper the knife, the less you cry. So very important, and you don't want to have a dull knife can slip, and that is definitely dangerous. Don't want that to happen. So now I have my two halves. Maybe this is better. Can you see better now? Cut off the tops. And these I'm going to save because I always have a bag in my freezer of vegetable trimmings, and when I get a nice big bag, that becomes a vegetable stock. So holding the onion like this with the stem end here. Of course, I'm left-handed, so most people are going to be right-handed. You'll switch the onion, the top, in the other direction. So it's going to be facing away from your body. And then the fingers gripping it. And now you want to take two slices, not straight across because that might hit your fingers. You want to go down at an angle, so avoiding your fingers. There we go. And now we're going to cut crosswise. And I have a nice wooden board here. Of course, I probably should have put a towel underneath just to make sure that it doesn't slip at all. And then this end, the root end here, I'm also going to save. That's going to go into my stock. Even a couple of the brown peels are nice because it gives a golden color to a stock. Not too much because it might get a little bit bitter. Here's two pieces that didn't get cut. Let's just do that. And now the other side. As with most soups, exact quantities are not usually that important. A little more onion or a little less. If you have a red onion instead of a yellow onion, if you have a white onion, all of those things are going to be possible, even shallots. And also this soup is sometimes made with yellow split peas instead of chickpeas. So mostly it's the idea of the golden color. As soon as you have a Rosh Hashanah dish, a lot of times it's going to have the gold because that's, you know, wishes for prosperity and success in the new year. And also you're going to use some of the more expensive ingredients like the saffron that maybe you wouldn't use as much in the rest of the year. So here is the onion. That's ready to go. Now, next is going to be the squash. So, Lori, could you hand me a couple of those little squashes right over there on, yeah, that one, and then that other funny looking one right in the back. That's it. So I just wanted to show you several different possibilities for squash. All of these were local. This is a butternut squash, which I'm going to use. As you can see, it's really huge. I need a squash that's about 2 pounds. This is about 5 pounds, but the rest of it I'm going to actually end up roasting. So I'm not going to use the whole thing for a soup. But this is a honey nut squash, so you could use that one. These are little, but very similar to butternut, and they all have that deep orange color and that dense flesh. And this is a gochujang. I'm not sure if I have that exactly right, but that's a really interesting squash, little squat, very dense flesh, really delicious flavor. So any of those are going to work. Orange squash. And so the easiest part of this squash to cut is going to be this neck end. So, because there's no seeds there. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this piece, and that's going to be close to 2 pounds. This other part, if we have time, I'll show you, but you split it open, it'll have the seed part inside. You're going to scoop those out and then roast it. So for this, we're going to do that. I'm going to cut it again to make it easier to, you could use a peeler, but if you cut it like this and you have, here, let's do that. A flat bottom, you always want the flat bottom for stability, so it's not going to slide around. And let's get rid of this in the meantime as well. Put that in here. And then, so I'm going to cut down on the sides to get rid of the peel. And that peel, by the way, is going to go into my bag with the trimmings for the next stock that I make. The orange gives a really nice color and nice sweet flavor. Okay, now that's that. Here's this. Put that aside, and now I'm going to cut the other one. I find it's easier to do it this way than to try to do it with a peeler, but you can certainly do a peeler. You could also buy the pre-cut, the diced butternut squash that some of the supermarkets have. But a lot of times I find that that kind is not as fresh. It's just been sitting on the shelf for too long. It's fine if you happen to get it on the day that they've just cut it, but what about if you get there, you know, it's a week later, it's not so good. Okay, so now I'm going to make slices. 1, 2, 3. So more or less even. You know, I can cut decently. As a chef, I certainly work with a knife for a long time, but I'm not super precise. Okay, so now I have the slices. Now I'm going to cut crosswise, and that's going to bake these sticks. Now that I have the sticks, turn them around and cut them again. And here come my cubes. Whoops, and one more here. So that's pretty even there, reasonably so. Ooh, that's not good. Oh, but you know what? When it went on the floor with Julia Child, she picked it up and she used it again. So if you just give it a rinse, and I will do that. Ah, that's it. Thank you. I can see. Oh, I bet those cookies are done. Just 1 minute. Here they go. Oh, timer didn't go off. We'll come back to that, right? Okay. I'll turn it off. Good. All right. I got the timer the first time. I got the temperature right, but I forgot to put it on the second time. Let's say la vie. It's amazing how with COVID, so many things seem a lot less important than they did before, huh? Things that were very upsetting are like, okay, no big deal. That's just the way it is. We've all had to be a lot more adaptable and creative. Okay, here we go. Try to hold them together so that you can cut crosswise. 1, 2, oops, and now next, that's the next set. And that soup looks like it's coming to a boil there with the chickpeas. I actually made the chickpeas ahead of time and put them in the freezer. So any kind of cooked beans that you make yourself, make it in a, I always double the batch. So instead of making 1 pound, I make 2 pounds, and then I put it into quarts or pints. Could be with some of the cooking liquid, and then I freeze it, and they freeze beautifully. And they're just so much better than you know, canned dried beans, but yet it's going to be just as convenient to have that. And I have definitely been eating a lot of beans. Of course, the first cookbook I ever wrote, which came out in 20 years ago, was called the Bean Bible, so it's not surprising. Okay, this is a little easier because these lengths are not quite as long as the first set. Maybe you can see better here if I move that away. Okay, and we're almost ready. Things like this, it's all about the prep. And so, you know, some of it you might want to make the day ahead of time. There's no reason you can't have the vegetables cut. And the onion I probably wouldn't cut ahead because it would make your refrigerator have a strong smell of onion. But the squash you could certainly cut ahead of time. Okay, so there's the squash. I have the onion, and the next thing I'm going to do is the ginger. So ginger, I got some nice fresh ginger here, and I use the back of a spoon to scrape away the skin. So you can see that here. Now you can use a peeler or a knife as well, but if you want to get the maximum amount of ginger out of it, this way of doing it with a spoon is a good way of doing it. And it's pretty nice and juicy, so you can see it's not that, not old. Sometimes you get ginger and it's green in the color, and that will show that it's old and getting really strong. So tenderer is better. And the parts that you can't get to will either cut away or I'll cut it with a knife. Here we go. And I'm wanting to have, in the end, about a cup of this ginger. This ginger skin, sometimes I save that and I make ginger syrup or dry it and use it for ginger tea. So definitely try to do the best to cut down on waste. If you want to buy good ingredients, you have to make the most out of it. And that's been really my theme all along. And at the end, I'll show you my latest book, which is Starting with Ingredients, 100 Delicious Ways to Make Use of What You've Got, which seems perfect for the times that we're living in right now. And something actually was planned before COVID hit. That's the way it worked out. Okay, and here's one more piece. Oop. Oops, I think I have to turn that flame down on the soup. That's just the stock that's cooking with the chickpeas over there on the stove. Whoops, get here. Okay, so I'm going to get this on here, and then let me turn this down. So it's just going to be simmering. And now, let's just clean up a tiny bit here. And then I have to chop the ginger. And then we're moving along. Won't have too much more to do for this soup. Okay. And there we go. So this piece here, I'm going to leave that aside for now. I'm going to slice it. Is noisy. Maybe I can put that over here for the moment. Okay, let's see if that's better. So slice it as thin as possible to begin with. You could also slice it up and then put it in the food processor, which I normally probably what I would do, but that's too much of a Megillah to do today. So moving the processor over here and setting it up and all that business is not going to work that well. I think that's going to be about enough. So we're just going to cut those slices crosswise. This board I really love. Actually, you can see, I'll show it to you afterwards, but it has rubber feet. So it doesn't means that you can't use both sides, but it means that it doesn't jump around on the counter like a lot of boards will. So that seems to be going to be more or less a cup. Now, I have to say that in Morocco, they would not be using fresh ginger. They would be using dried ginger. That's because ginger came from so far away, they didn't grow it there, so they had to dry it in order to be able to transport it. So they got used to using only dried ginger. I prefer the taste of fresh ginger and just spicier and more fragrant, so that's what I use. But, you know, we can adapt for modern times and modern availabilities. So you want the pieces, you don't want to have big pieces, you don't want to chomp down on a giant piece of ginger. Fairly even. Almost done here though. Okay. And I think I'll do one more round. That smells really good, huh? Okay, so now we have my ginger ready, and I think I need one more bowl here. There we go. Let's put the ginger in there. And now I need, oh well, that's just going to have to go here for now. Put that aside because I need a bowl for the saffron. So, I wanted to show you about that. The saffron, this is actually a box, it's a full ounce of Spanish saffron that I bought a while ago. And it's, you know, it's expensive. This probably costs $60, possibly $80 for the ounce. On the other hand, you might be able to buy it and split it with somebody, share it, you know, with a group. It's so much less expensive than when you try to buy the small amounts. And I keep the saffron in the freezer, and it actually, as long as it's, you know, kept cold and dark inside the container, it's going to keep for several years. So this is the Spanish saffron. Inside is the bag like that, and this is actually Moroccan saffron that I brought back from Morocco. So if I can get it open, oh, there it is. I thought I would use that one. Let's open up this bag, and maybe we can, I'll give you a nice shot of that. Here we go. So you can see that beautiful saffron in there, and it has such an aroma. It's a gorgeous thing. But saffron is wonderful, but it is actually something, I have to say, that more is not better. So you want to use enough, but you don't want to overdo it. So here's this, and I'm going to take these and I'm going to crumble them up a little bit, just to break it up. And then Lori, if you could just put a little water in there. Just take that bowl and, you know, like a half a cup or so of cold water. Because basically when you work with saffron, you always want to bloom it. So you want to soak it in some kind of liquid. And there it is. Thank you. So it's already starting to give off its color. And after a little while, it's going to get even brighter. So now I have that. And then I have the bay leaves, which I'm going to be using, which give a really nice sweetness to it. These are actually bay leaves that I dried from grown by a local farmer. So I have my collection there. And then I have the cinnamon. Now I happen to love the true cinnamon, which comes from Sri Lanka, and that's this kind. It looks like you can see the ends that it's fine, it's rolled up like a rug, and it's kind of a tan color. It's also soft enough that you can take it with your fingers and crush it up. So the cinnamon that's more common in America is Indonesian acacia cinnamon, and that kind is going to be much harder and woody, and you would need to break it up with a hammer or something like that. But in this case, I'm actually going to use some of it that I ground. Oh, it's right in front of me. That's why I can't find it. I ground it myself. I crumbled it up, and then I have just a little coffee grinder that I use to grind up spices. So that's the cinnamon. Now we have the bay, we have the ginger. So everything is now ready, and now I just want to set up my little cassette feu, the little portable butane burner, and we'll finish the soup. So these I actually bought from Amazon, but they're Palouse. The Palouse is the high plains in eastern Washington and also in Idaho, where the best beans in the country are grown. And definitely, you know, they're nice. It's a big, really important, especially for chickpeas if you're using dried ones. Because a lot of times the supermarket brands, they can be on the shelf for up to 10 years. We don't have dates, harvest dates on our beans in America, where in Europe, if you buy a bag of beans, it'll tell you when it was harvested. So we have no way of knowing how old it is. So I would suggest buying from a place that is really specializes in it, so you know that they're turning them over a lot. And another thing about cooking chickpeas, I mentioned before that when you cook them, you're going to have a huge amount of white foam that'll come up, which you have to skim off. You don't want to salt them. You salt them when they're about halfway cooked. But also, if your water is very hard, as it is in this area, we have hard water high in acid, you can neutralize the water a little bit by putting in a pinch of baking soda when you're cooking. So if you see the chickpeas are cooking and cooking, and they're just not getting soft at all, put a pinch of baking soda in the water, and that should help. I don't like to use a lot because it cuts down on the nutritional value of the beans. But anyway, these are really good. So I'm going to start with the soup now. I have this little portable butane burner. Hopefully it'll be, there it is. You have to be adaptable, and here we are. So olive oil, use a nice extra virgin olive oil. This happens to be the Kalamata oil from Trader Joe's, which is good and pretty reasonable. Generous with the oil, and that is definitely a characteristic of Sephardic Jewish cooking, is using olive oil, and I love using it. I love the smell of it, so I'm very happy with that. So we're going to heat that, and then I have the onions that we did before. Plenty of onions, but I think we'll just use them all because a few more onions is still going to taste good, right? Now that's going to just have to heat up for a couple minutes. Yep, it's already going. Using it on, I do have a gas stove, thank goodness. I lived for about 4 years in a house that had a really wonderful kitchen, but it had an electric stove, and boy, I have so much sympathy for anybody who has to work with an electric stove. And in a way, I'm happy that I had that chance to work with it, to really understand what people are going through. That really that's what they have to work with. Anyway, here we go with the gas. Little piece of skin there. And then I have the ginger is going to go in. So ginger and the onions, those two parts of it. And you want it to cook it until, call it wilted or transparent, not really until it browns. I have the onions and the bay leaves are in here, and now it's going to be the cinnamon. Yeah, well, you know what? I'll just do it in my hand. A tablespoon of cinnamon. That's going to be more or less a tablespoon. And that's going to smell so good once the cinnamon gets in there. So I have the cinnamon, I have the ginger, and now it's going to be the butternut squash that we cut up before. And for those, you'll remember from the Italian program, the Italian session that I did last night, that the zucca squash, which is their version of a butternut or calabaza squash, is extremely important in Sephardic cooking in Italy and also in Morocco and North Africa in general. So basically, whenever you see that squash, you know that there's a Sephardic connection. So here's this. Just going to stir that around. And next is going to be you can see here's that saffron that we soaked, so it's got that really lovely color in there. That's going to go in and get all the pieces. You want to get Don't want to lose anything there. And then I'm going to bring over the chicken stock. I used chicken stock that I made that I cooked the chickpeas in. So that was on a separate pot just to save time. And here we go. I think I actually have to do it the other way. I think it's not going to all fit into this pot. So we'll take this off and put this over here for a minute. Okay, here comes this one. I wanted to do it in a wider pot so you could see into it more easily, but I guess best laid plans. Okay. Now the edges are not really hot here, but not in general, not a good idea to pick up a pot without pot holders, especially to make sure that, and here I want to put this on here so it doesn't mess up the bottom of the wooden table. And this is coming to a boil. I have that on the highest, and this is going in. Oop. Let's see if I can do it from that direction. So everything that was in the pot, the onions, the cinnamon, the ginger, the saffron, and now the chickpeas. Get that all out of there. Does that smell good? It does, right? Okay, now the only thing I need to put in here is a little bit of sea salt, so I'll just go get some of that. And, pretty big pinch, especially with beans. They soak up a lot of any kind of starchy things soak up salt. So this is going to make more than a gallon. It's maybe a gallon and a half. So again, it's a little bit of a larger recipe, but it does freeze extremely well. So this actually needs to cook now until the squash gets soft, which is going to take probably 10-15 minutes. In the meantime, we'll finish with the cookies. So here the cookies came out of the oven. Maybe I could have left them maybe 1 or 2 minutes less, although I tend to like cookies on the browner side because I like that crunch. Here they all are, and you can see that they come away nicely from the bottom. Just want to move that a little bit. When they're not quite done, they're going to stick to the bottom. And now a generous amount of powdered sugar. Again, very typical to use quite a bit of powdered sugar. If you remember the Bastia, the Moroccan chicken pie or pigeon pie that always has a layer of thick powdered sugar and cinnamon on top. Well, this gets the same thing. In this case, I didn't put the cinnamon. It's just the powdered sugar, but they do use it a lot. Okay, I think that's good. Let me arrange them on a plate so they'll look pretty. Okay, and now put that aside. And this, it's coming to a boil. It'll come to a boil in a minute. So in the meantime, maybe we can taste a cookie, and then we'll sit outside, and we'll come back in time for the soup will be ready in about 10 or 15 minutes, and then we can have a taste of that. But, you know, the soup is really not, I would say, not that complicated. It does have a few parts. And of course, you could use chicken stock that you purchase, you know, especially in the Tetra Pak, that kind of cardboard containers. There's some brands, the Pacific one that has the kosher chicken stock, that's the one that I have found has the best flavor. But in general, you know, being as a chef, I definitely like to have my own stock, and I'll just put that in quarts, and I keep that in the freezer for when I just ready to have it. So the soup is just coming to a boil. Once it does that, I may have to skim it a couple times. You can see some of the, I'm not sure if you can see from there, but some of the foam is starting to come up from the chickpeas. So we will skim some of that off. And just to take some of this, it's like the foam impurities there, it's protein impurities. You want to have more of a nice clear broth. There we go. And that can go actually into here, that's good. And just give that a stir. You can see all this nice, it's just this great combination. The chickpeas give it the nuttiness and the squash gives it the sweetness. So, and it's also a soup for those that are vegan. You could definitely do that with a vegetable stock. So, or if you want to make it parve, you don't have to use a chicken stock. Although it would be certainly more typical in Morocco to use a chicken stock. The soup is ready. The squash is nice and soft, and the chickpeas were soft ahead of time. So that's it. And I tasted it for seasoning. And let's serve some of the soup. There's that. Yeah, they're a little hard. Crunchy. We'll call them crunchy. Here we go. And now, I don't want to burn our collective tongues here. Should we go outside and finish it out there? I think that we're really ready here. The only thing I would say about the soup is, you know, let it cool. Put it in if you have quart containers or some other kind of container. And then either, you know, you could serve some of it today, refrigerate it if you're going to serve it, well, probably within 5 days or so. And if you want to keep it for longer, you want to put it in the freezer, but make sure that the soup is cold before it goes in the freezer. Because if you put it in while it's still hot or even warm, it's going to get that bubble on the top because it'll expand as it's chilling down. So wait till it's cold. And also you don't want to put heat into your freezer and warm anything up in there. And I always put a label, masking tape label with a date on it. And basically anything in the freezer up to 6 months. Once it's past 6 months, you get rid of it or cook it. But I don't keep it longer than that. And you know, the freezer is a wonderful thing, but it shouldn't be like a long-term trash can or something gets lost in there for then it's 2 years later and you're like, what is this? So definitely the labels. And but the soup, it does another one that just freezes beautifully. And I hope that you enjoyed this. We're gonna go and have a taste of the soup outside. I just wanted to take a chance to show you this is the latest book, The Starting with Ingredients, as I mentioned before. It's really adorable. They did this nice with the little dictionary tabs here. So, you know, if you want to get the citrus, you go to the little orange there. If you want to go to the apples, or what is this one? Actually, this was nuts. That had little peanuts there. Here's the tomatoes and peppers. So I think they did a very nice job. I think it's very approachable. There's a lot of good information. And the recipes are definitely more home style. I'm just very happy with it. And they do have it for sale. If you're in Elkins Park area, they have it at the open bookshop. And I actually I signed some books in there. So, but if you buy a book, get in touch with me. I'm also happy to bring it over and I'll come down on my porch and sign the book and give it to you like that. So please, but please don't hesitate to get in touch. I have a website, which is just alizagreen.com. And then my email is spice@alizagreen.com. And I always love to hear from viewers, listeners, questions, anything like that. So I hope you've enjoyed it. We're going to go get a taste of the soup.